Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I give you a early June garden tour. So let's go. There is so much beauty in the garden right now, and what I'm planning to do is I will show you at a high level what a flower bed looks like, but then I'll take you in for close-up shots of different flowers. And I'm not going to put up the names of the plants on the screen, but I'll do my best to tell you what the plants are. And if you want more information regarding anything that you see, please drop it down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel. It's free to you, but it really helps me out. If you like this video, please hit the like button. And also don't forget to hit the notification bell down at the bottom. That way you'll be notified every single time I put out a new video. All right, so let's get going with the tour. We're going to start the tour on the south side of my house. This is probably the sunniest part of my yard. And we're going to start right over here. At the very front of the border, down here, there are a bunch of Dianthus blooming. A lot of people think that Dianthus are annuals because the label on a pot might say it's an annual. But oftentimes my experience has been that Dianthus will come back year after year, at least here where I live, zone 5B. And I have basically just divided and moved my Dianthus. And you can tell it is in its glory. It's very, very happy here. I initially just started off with a patch along here. And then what I've done over time, and when I say over time, literally over the last probably 3 years or 2 years, is I've taken pieces and I have continued to divide and move this plant around. I just think it looks so wonderful right now, but even when it goes by, it's really a nice border plant just for the green foliage that it provides. And then last spring, together in a video, we divided and moved a bunch more of this Dianthus. You can't even tell. You would think that it's been here for years. When I tell people that this border on this side of my walkway is literally only 1 year old, they can't believe it. So that is the name of the game when it comes to gardening for me, is divide and move your perennials around. It's so fun to go shopping in your own yard, and you can really save a lot of money that way. It really, really is such a pretty plant. And if you maintain it just right and cut it back, it will just reward you over and over again each year. I'll be sure to put links to videos, including how to take care of your Dianthus, down in the description below. Right behind the Dianthus are a bunch of another type of Dianthus. And what I like about this one is it has a lighter colored leaf to it, and it's almost like a silvery gray color. And then it has even a really pretty blossom to it. And I think that Dianthus just adds a little bit of whimsy to this garden bed. And there it is right there. And if you can believe it, last spring, together we took one patch of that Dianthus and we divided it and we moved it. And that's what you see over here. And that's what you also see in this line coming this way here. This flower bed is definitely getting full. And what I'd love to do is divide this into more pieces and just add a little bit more on this side here. The bloodroot's going by. Over here is a type of geranium that needs to get potted up into a more beautiful pot. And then over here is Joe Pye weed. I love Joe Pye weed. I think it's beautiful for fall interest, and it will get much taller than what you see here. Right near the Joe Pye weed is a perennial mum. In early July, I'll be showing you my process for cutting this back because you don't want your perennial mums to flop in the fall time. So we'll need to do the Chelsea chop to that soon enough. Speaking of the perennial mum, there's another piece of it over here. In case you're wondering the color, it's a very, very pretty purple color. I don't know if you remember what this bed looked like in the springtime. It looks so different. There were a bunch of daffodils that were blooming. They're all around a rock in here. You can't even see them. They're pretty much hidden. But since those daffodils went by, this bed just absolutely filled in with color. And that's the name of the game, is you want to create color for at least 3 seasons of interest, depending on where you live. Over here is a grass, and it's some sort of a miscanthus. I don't know the exact variety, but it has a very pretty feathery plume to it in the fall time. There's a beautiful peony over here, and then at the base of it is globe thistle. So again, you can see that the globe thistle is growing. It's not going to bloom for another number of weeks, but while we wait for it, the peony right behind it is blooming. I do have support systems in place for my peonies to help with the flopping, but even though I have support systems in place, they still flop. It just is what happens with them. I'm probably going to be investing into larger rings for my peonies to help with the flopping of the plant. Right behind this peony is a very, very pretty false indigo or baptisia. All of these plants in this bed do much better when you're in full sun. And I really love the baptisia or false indigo. And what's nice is when you collect their seeds, you can end up with a ton more of this plant. Right near this baptisia or false indigo are a bunch of seedlings, and they are the sea holly. They'll be blooming pretty soon, and when they do, I'll be sure to show you in a future video what they look like. But you can see they're pretty happy and they're budded up. Here's another peony over here, and right near the peony is a lupin. I'll be coming in and cutting that back in hopes that it'll give another flush of color. It was a very pretty purple colored lupin. It's amazing how quickly this flower bed gets filled up, but I do have small pockets that are free, like right in here, and I'm planning on putting annuals in there so that when everything else has gone by in this bed, we'll still have some color. The same thing applies on this side here. We have some nice pockets of availability where I can put annuals. As we head away from this flower bed, but still stay on the south side of my house, you'll see that there's some blue chairs in the distance. And I have a fire pit over there. There's some raised beds that just have strawberries and blueberries. And then right near this patch of grass here, there are some beautiful flowers. I'm going to take you in there so you can take a look at what's flowering right now. And here's just another side or another angle of this flower bed. It's actually a pretty big flower bed, but I thought it would be nice to start on this side of the bed. Well, my plant nursery is right over here. I'll be making a video soon talking a little bit more about my experience with my plant nursery during the second year of having one. But we're going to move this way, and I want to show you, I have a very beautiful clematis or clematis, however you want to pronounce it, that's blooming. Look how vibrant that is. At the base of the clematis over here, there is a bleeding heart, and it's a fringed bleeding heart. And there are a couple of different colors. We have a pink one as well as a white one. And right near the bleeding heart, I planted a bunch of annuals that I started from seed. They're pretty small, but they're going to take right off. And right behind those annuals, we have more peonies. Most of them are budded up, and there is one that's blooming off in the distance here. We have some more fringed bleeding heart, another clematis, a little different color, and then a very pretty peony. In a lot of places in my yard, you'll notice the Celladoro daylilies, and you can see that they're just budded up. I made a video recently showing you my process for maintenance in terms of cutting back the blossoms on the Lungwort or the Pulmonaria. In the distance over here, these are just some seedlings of the black-eyed Susan or Rebecca. We also have some echinacea or purple coneflower. And right behind it is another peony. And in some cases, I need to check my peonies because it might very well be that they're planted too deep, which is why they're not blooming. So I'm just going to have to lift them. So next year they put on a better show. I've finally gotten around to starting to put down mulch, but it's going to be a long process, but at least it has begun. And there is a big hydrangea over here. Right near the hydrangea, there's bleeding heart, and it's just starting to go by. Isn't it beautiful? This is the old-fashioned bleeding heart. As we head this way, you can see there are more peonies that are budded up and lots of other things waiting to bloom. The pattern pretty much repeats itself in many of my beds. Again, we have Pulmonaria, the black-eyed Susan. Over here, that is the echinacea or the coneflower. There's a bleeding heart down over here. We have a peony over here. This will bloom late summer, early fall, and that is the great blue lobelia. There's a rose back here. And as we head this way, there's a Miss Kim lilac tucked in the back over here. This is the ox-eye Shasta daisy. I have been successful at dividing my peonies, and I plan on dividing some more later this season. I'll be sure to show you my process for doing that. I love this border. I just think it's so cheery, so pretty. Even if there are weeds in there and the bed needs to be edged and mulched, I really am enjoying the peonies. And I just have to take you in because they're all a little bit different. Some of these that are just barely starting to open, I can't wait to see what they look like. They're really, really pretty. And I'm glad I put the Shasta daisies in here last year. I noticed that this flower bed had a lot of pink in it, and I felt that it needed a little bit of a different color. The purple clematis was in here already, but I wanted to add an element of white in here, and I'm glad I did. You'll notice again, there's a lot of Stelladoro daylilies, so by the time the peonies go by, these daylilies will be taken off and they'll be the star of the show in here. I really need to invest in a better trellis system for my clematis because they want to take off. rambling in this bed. So that's one of my goals for this year. Again, there are quite a few peonies that are budded up and they're not ready to show you how pretty they are. Hopefully I'll be able to do another garden tour so I can show you that. In case you're wondering what this is a red colored bee balm. The hummingbirds love the bee balm. And I also have the bee balm tucked into this bed. So you can imagine that's going to provide some nice pretty color once the peonies go by. As we move this way, we have some hydrangeas, and some of them are just starting to bud up. Some pretty peonies tucked in here. May seem like an eyesore, but it's a very functional eyesore. Here are all my milk jugs from the winter sewing project that we did together during the winter months. When things quiet down for me, I will be busy going through each of these milk jugs and showing you my process for thinning out the seedlings. As we make our way this way, you'll see that there are a bunch of raised flower beds. And honestly, I have spent some time in here, but it's not optimal, but I do want to show you what they look like. This one originally had small alpine strawberries as well as blueberries in it. I was definitely late this season and am still late this season with tending to these raised beds. And that is okay, it happens. And you can see I had planted very recently my anemone and ranunculus. Now, they absolutely would have put on a much better show had I gotten them in probably a month ago. They just got placed about a week ago, which is why they look sad. But the key right now is to just keep them alive so they're feeding the corms for next year. And amongst all this chaos, there is still some beauty. So we might as well just enjoy that. And even though all these plants just got placed a week ago, the key again is to make sure that the plants are just giving enough energy to feed the corms for next year. The alpine strawberries have just started to turn red, which is nice and exciting. And these plants have recovered from their transplant shock from a few weeks ago. And they absolutely did go under a lot of shock because I planted them so late into the season. You typically want to do this when the strawberries are just barely waking up. And I'm not sure if we'll get any blueberries, at least on a couple of these blueberry bushes, because again, they went under some shock when I transplanted them. But at least they look healthy. And as we move this way, this bed definitely has gone under a lot of shock because when I started moving my raspberries as well as my larger sized strawberries, it just was so hot. And when I say so hot, maybe in the low 70s to high 80 degrees. And the plants are just trying to recover. But you can see if you look closely that some of these larger sized strawberries are still trying. And my job here is not done. We will have some cooler rainy days. And on those days, I'm going to come in and plant the rest of the strawberries. And I'm getting those strawberries from the bed that's right next to it, which is over here. You can see I'm almost done emptying it out. I just need to remove the rest of those strawberries and move them, and then top off this raised bed. And once I top off this raised bed, I'm going to take everything from in there and move those into this bed. And the reason I'm doing that, in case you're wondering, is the level dropped quite a bit in these raised beds because I had put a lot of material in here that breaks down easily, like grass clippings and leaves. So they just need to be topped off. It's more of an aesthetic thing than anything else. And then part of me says, maybe I should just wait because look at how many blueberries are on here. You can see them all. Do I really want to put these plants under the stress? I don't want to lose all my blueberries. We'll see. I kind of feel like it's not a huge priority right now. Along my driveway, as well as other places in my yard, are hanging baskets that we put together in the early spring months. And what I plan on doing is pulling the pansies out of these and putting other plants in here. Many of the places in my yard are shady, so we'll probably be putting impatiens in these baskets. And you'll see that the pansies have started to go to seed. It's a great time for us to collect seeds from them. I'll have to show you in a video my process for collecting pansy seeds. Over there is my side walkway porch, and this bed is often referred to as the old arborvitae bed because years ago I used to have 3 arborvitae in this bed that got removed. I'm going to show you close up how it's looking. It's coming together. Last year this was filled. It looks so pretty, but it's still very early on in the season. So we just need to be patient and give it time. This bed is packed with a ton of different plants. You can see that we have pansies here. There are a bunch of alyssum. They're still pretty small. There are blue lobelia, and then we have a ton of coleus in here. There's candy tuft, which is a perennial, and that has just gone by. There is the beautiful vinca. Those are annuals here where I live. There is a perennial, which is the ajuga ground cover, and that just barely stopped blooming. You can see there's one blossom there. There are some small leaf rhododendrons in here. They were put here temporarily, and eventually they'll get moved out to a permanent place in my yard. I still have a bunch of containers, pots, hanging baskets, and window boxes to put together for the summer. This one we put together recently in another video. I just wanted to give you an update on how it's looking. It hasn't put on a ton of growth yet, but it still looks pretty filled in, and I'm happy with it. As we head away from the porch and we go more towards my backyard, this is the east side of my house. Let's head down this way. This is what I call my main hosta garden. You'll see that there are a bunch of hanging baskets that again will be tended to, and we're going to pack them with impatiens. And at the base of these trees, I have been working very hard to line them with these smaller size hosta. Last year, we planted these ones up as well as these ones up. And these other 2 trees, these were done a few years ago, which is why they're more filled in. But eventually, these trees here will start to be filled in like these over here. I'm very pleased with how my hosta garden is looking. Last year, my husband and I installed drip irrigation in this bed. Hosta do so much better when they have drip, or at least are watered consistently all the time. They love water. The other thing that we did last year in a previous video is we divided and conquered. We divided a ton of the hosta that were in this bed, and we tried to fill in gaps. There are still small gaps in here, but give it time because I literally had divided hosta down to a single hosta when we did this project of dividing them and filling in gaps. So you can imagine each year after this, this is just going to get filled in more and more. I really have tried to spend a lot of time looking at the different colors of the hosta, the blue versus the green, the sizes of the hosta, because some are very large, some are smaller. And then also just the margin on the hosta. You know, some of them are variegated. Some of them are not variegated. They're all different types of variegation. So I've really tried to play around with that and make it more interesting in this bed. If you were to ask me, what's my favorite hosta? Boy, I don't even know. They all are different and unique in their own way. And as we head in this direction towards my backyard, this is where the weedy mess begins from my backyard. And I will always be honest in my videos because I want you to know that no garden is perfect. I mean, that's part of being a backyard gardener, right? There are lots of beautiful things in here. And then amongst the beauty, there are a lot of weeds. And my motto for this year is one bed at a time. And it might not be one full flower bed at a time. It might be one section of a flower bed at a time. And I'll be sure to bring you on that journey as much as I can this year. This right here is a type of Tiarella or a Foamflower. And then you can see some really pretty color tucked in right here. These are just different types of coral bells or Heuchera. We put these in last year, and I'm glad we did because it makes me realize I need more of these type of colors throughout my garden. And tucked in right here are tiny little Japanese painted ferns. We have more of the French bleeding heart. And then over here are Hellebrores or Lenten rose, and they are just starting to go by. But I really love them so much. And last year I showed you my process for dividing them just to increase my stock in them. We have a ton more of the Lungwort or Pulmonaria. I really have been trying to divide and move that around my yard. And then over here is a Ligularia. That's going to have a very pretty yellow flower to it. And right behind this Ligularia here, if we move in this direction, that's a goat's beard. I've never had it bloom in my yard. I had it down in my plant nursery and we put it there last year. So you can see it's budded up and it's going to bloom this year. I can't wait. These really pretty leaves here, these are bloodroot. They bloomed in the springtime. It was a very pretty white colored flower. And then after the blossom goes by, you basically have these nice big leaves that add a lot of interest to a woodland garden. And there's our Hosta garden. And these are some of the Heuchera that I was just showing you. And if you can look beyond the weeds, there's just so much beauty in this bed. There's some really pretty lime green colored Hosta. And I worked on this bed last year, and I can't wait to work on this bed again because the hard part's done, which was designing, moving around perennials. I spent a lot of time on that, and that's why there's a lot of interest in here. I just need to weed it, and then towards the front of the bed, we're going to pack it with a bunch of annuals that I started from seed. We're going to mulch this, and we're going to get it looking beautiful all over again. These pretty pink flowers, these are a type of coral bell. And what's nice about the Heucheras or coral bells is that they all not only have a different color of foliage or leaf to them, but also they all have different colored blooms to them, and they all bloom at different times. So you can see the leaf of this Heuchera. Lots of repeating plants throughout my bed, simply because I just keep dividing and moving my plants. I love blue hosta. I just think it's very pretty. Towards the back of this bed are a couple of Columbine and another goat's beard right over here. That's just a close-up of this Columbine here. And the goat's beard is budded up. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see it blooming. It's going to have a nice, pretty, creamy white color. I'm always trying and experimenting with different things. And I did put a peony here. It's clearly, in my opinion, too shady to do much of anything in this bed. But at least we tried. And now I know I can move it to elsewhere in my garden. Just looking at this space is actually getting me pretty excited. On one hand, it should stress me out, but I'm not going to let it. I am super excited to tackle this bed because I know that there's so much beauty in here, and we just need to uncover that beauty. This bed also has a ton of astilbe in it, and once we start uncovering all the plants, you'll see the astilbe out in this bed in many places. Also inside this bed, there are a bunch of betony or stachys. It's the humelo type. And I always wanted the Heuchera grass. You can see that there's a chunk right there, and then there's another one right over here. There's a very pretty pistachio colored Heuchera or coral bells right in here. And you can see there's a little bit of a pattern going on between these two colors. We worked on this bed last year, so that's why there are some very pretty things tucked in here. Another Heuchera, and last year we put in that Sun King Gold, I believe is the name of it. That's over there. And a very pretty peony in the distance. And there's another peony that's going to bloom here. Now, again, I am testing or experimenting with these peonies, but clearly they're not going to do their best because it is pretty shady out in this area here. But they're trying. My husband was very surprised. He's like, wow, even if they only have one bud on each of them, the fact that they even have buds on them at all is pretty amazing. At this point of the tour, I'm pretty much going to target and just show you different plants that are looking pretty. And we could definitely look at all the weeds, but let's not do that. So here we have just some of the many different lamium that I have in my yard. And you can see that there's a really pretty one here that has a pinkish purple blossom. There's one over there that has like a light pink blossom. And then there is one over here. And just notice how different the leaf looks compared to the other lamium. So there are a couple of different colors of blooms as well as leaf structure, which is very interesting. In another video, I'm going to show you my process for moving forsythia bushes or shrubs. This is a huge forsythia that needs to be moved. And at the base of the forsythia is a beautiful hosta. I'm almost sure it's called Sum in Substance. It's meant to be one of those nice big hosta, and it needs room to breathe. And as we head away from this forsythia and keep going towards my backyard, some very, very pretty lamium here. Lots of astilbe in my yard because I have so much shade. I love astilbe. And because Mr. Budget Gardener and I are slowly tackling one bed at a time when it comes to irrigation, the astilbe will be happy because it does not like to get dried out. There's some very pretty Solomon seal. It's the variegated kind of Solomon seal in the back of this bed. Another meant to be large hosta. Again, I believe it's Sum in Substance, but even if it's not, I think it gets to be bigger than what it is. Like most ground covers, lamium can get out of control. But like most ground covers, as long as you tend to them and keep them in check, they will provide lots of shade and they will choke out weeds. So definitely consider lamium as a ground cover in your yard. I just think it's very pretty, and you can even take pieces of it and put it in pots and containers. I love using the trees in my yard for either hanging baskets or to put a trellis up against them. And here's a really pretty clematis in the backyard here. I'm still learning a lot about each of my clematis plants, but clearly this one would benefit from being cut back to the ground. I just need to remember to do that. And then at the base here, that very pretty pink color flower, that's a perennial Cranesbill Geranium. I know exactly where I'm going to be digging and moving that to. This over here is a beautiful beauty bush. I just love it. I have it in a number of places in my yard, but this is the one that's putting on the show this year. It is so pretty, and you can tell clearly the butterflies like it as well. I didn't think I was going to show you this weedy jungle in my backyard, but I'm glad I am. I want to keep this video real. There are a bunch of creeping phlox. I think they don't get enough sun here. So they will be dug up. I don't need that much in my yard because I just don't have a lot of sunny patches. And since I have a backyard plant nursery, so many people are always looking for creeping phlox. So when I work on this bed, I will be digging those up, pulling out the weeds from them and potting them up, getting them ready for next year. There are also some very pretty iris in this bed. And as we move this way, you'll see another purple colored flower. And that's called spiderwort or Tradesgantia, I think is how you say it. The tricky part about this plant is its foliage almost looks like grass. So when you have grass that's also growing along with the plant, it makes it very tricky in terms of weeding this area. There were also a ton of Stelladoro daylilies in here, and you'll find that plant quite a bit in my yard. All of these daylilies here are Stelladoro. And then right here is a very pretty pink columbine. I have the pink columbine in a number of places in my yard along with the purple. This was kind of a fun experiment for me last year. Let me take you in for a closer look. When we were in Canada a couple of years ago, I noticed that they used creeping jenny or Lismachia as a ground cover. I thought to myself, I might want to try that. And I'm going to be experimenting a lot with different ground covers to see what I like and different applications of ground cover. And I feel like when it comes to this application, I actually like it. When I'm in my house and I look in my backyard from within the house and it's kind of dark, kind of shady, this area pops. You just notice that light green color from inside and it makes the dark area look not so dark. Now, whether or not I love having the grass, which is a blue fescue, tucked in here, I'm not sure yet. I'm still thinking about it. But I do enjoy having the creeping jenny. I think it looks very pretty here. I've spent a lot of time over the years amending the soil, adding compost, and really trying to get the lawn to look better, and also dethatching it. But I need to spend more time on these flower beds in the back, and I really want to focus on that this year. And if I do, it's literally going to take me all year, but that's okay. It's going to be worth it in the end. And this guy needs to get moved. This is another beauty bush, and it's really leaning over. It's not happy here, so we'll find another place for it. Do you remember in the spring how beautiful all the daffodils look like over here? Well, they've all gone by, and there are some beautiful things tucked in this bed. I'm going to bring you in for a closer look. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's a big squirrely, weedy mess out here, but amongst the weedy mess, there are a ton of daylilies that fall right along here. And these are all different colored daylilies. These are not the Stelladoro. There's like so many different kinds in here. And I put a lot of plants in this bed as quote unquote temporary holding spaces. So what will end up happening over time is I will be taking plants out of here and moving them around my yard because, as you know, daylilies like full sun. And this area gets some sun, but it's not full sun. Tucked in behind the daylilies is a whole entire row of peonies. And some of those peonies came from my parents' house. They have a lot of sentimental value to me. And some came from my mother-in-law's house, and those also mean a lot to me. So I will enjoy moving things out of this bed and finding new homes for them in other places of my garden. I have onions over here. I have a bunch of green beans that are just starting to come up. And this reminds me, I need to come in here, stake up my asparagus and put in another row of green beans because I like to succession plant them. The cucumbers have just started to come up, so we need to add a trellis for that. There's a bunch of Swiss chard, there's a bunch of lettuce, and then we even have peas. And under here are a bunch of brassicas. There's broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and I'm probably going to be removing the netting because the plants are just getting too large and they need to breathe. As we head away from the vegetable garden over here, I call this my rose garden. And I used to have a swimming pool here, just one of those ones that, for kids. It's not a very large space, but it was big enough for the kids to have fun in. And in here are a bunch of different roses. There's a ton of perennial coreopsis. And then there are even a bunch of Shasta daisies in here. I added the coreopsis and Shasta daisy last year because I wanted to add additional color other than the color that the roses provided. And there are a bunch of daffodils in here that looked really, really pretty in the early spring months. And those have just gone by and they really need to be cut back at this point because it's been well over 6 weeks since they bloomed. So their energy is stored for next year. And here's a different angle of what I was showing you earlier. So all the daylilies in here, and then all the peonies in here. Since I already showed you the beauty bush a couple of times in the distance, there's another one. Clearly it gets more sun than others in my yard, but still they really do prefer a full sun. Towards the front of this bed are all different colors and variations of Heuchera or coral bells. You can see that there's some Hosta in the background. There's weeds. There's lots going on in these beds. And as we get to this point here onward, the weeds aren't as bad, simply because I worked on these beds mostly over the last few years. What I'm really enjoying this year is the European wild ginger. I have it tucked in a couple of areas behind trees, and I'd like to continue that pattern towards the front of the tree. I love tucking things in around the trees or on the trees and just using that space in my yard. See, when you walk around on this side, look how cute that is. They do they do have a blossom in the early spring, but it's not known for the blossom. It's known more just for the foliage. It's a slow grower, but boy, it's so pretty. And as we head this way towards basically the west side of my house, this is the front yard. Lots of pretty things out here. I'm not really going over the plants that aren't fully blooming or even budded because there's just too much going on. But there are lots of Stella d'Oro daylilies budded up. You'll see more Heuchera. The GM that we planted in here looked really pretty. It's just starting to go by. I need to research because I'm not that familiar with the plant. If I deadhead it, will it bloom more for me? And when we planted the GM, we also planted, I believe it's called the coneflower, the perennial type. Very pretty. We have some coreopsis in here that's going to bloom later in the summer. Tucked in over there is a Weigelia. We have some beautiful lambs here. The purple that you see in the distance, those are iris. Towards the front of this bed, a lot more of the creeping phlox. Again, I will be digging and moving those because they're not happy here. It's just too shady. And yet iris, a lot of times they like full sun, but they are doing fine here. So I'm constantly just learning about my garden and what does well and what does not do well in different pockets of my yard. And one example of that would be this guy right here. This is another beauty bush. And while it has a couple of blossoms on it, it's nothing like the one I showed you on the other side of my house. So I might give it one more year, and if it doesn't perform next year, then I would move it. It's large, it's happy, but it needs to show me some more blooms. And as we make our way this way, I call this the lilac bed for the simple reason that it has a nice big lilac tree that's very happy here. And there is a ton of stuff packed into this small little bed. Well, I say small, it's a good size bed, but there are perennial mums in here that are yellow color. And next to those perennial mums, right over here, there are aster. And that pattern repeats itself all the way around. Like everything else in this bed, there is a pattern. There are Stella d'Oro daylilies that are just starting to bloom. And then towards the front is a combination of creeping phlox and also lamium. And tucked inside of this bed, which was an experiment for me, I planted them here last year, but they're kind of flopping over, are some really pretty iris. There's one iris there, there's one iris there, there's one there. And they are super beautiful, but you just can't really enjoy them. I know exactly where I'm going to be digging them and moving them to, so we can really enjoy them next year. But clearly the lamium is very happy here, so that's a keeper. I'll be showing you in another video my process for dividing my mums. I need to do that soon before it's too late because they take a long time for their roots to establish. We have another hydrangea here. We have some more of the spiderwort or Tradescantia over here. And then it's flopping a little bit, but you can see they're blooming. That's lady's mantle. And I have a ton of it in this area. And this plant, I definitely want to divide and move all around my yard because it does so well in the shade. And since I have so much shade, I think it would look really pretty all around my yard. And just see how pretty it is with the water droplets on it. There are Stella d'Oro daylilies in here as well. And they actually do very well in this bed, surprisingly. So if we head in this direction here, we're going towards the front of my house. I just like to call that either the front walkway or also the bay window flower bed for the simple reason that we have a bay window there. I'll take you up there. This flower bed is really coming along nicely. I'm very pleased with how I'm making changes to it every year. And we have a whole line of Stelladoro daylilies. And at the base of the Stelladoro daylilies is Cranesbill Geranium. I'm planning on dividing and moving the Cranesbill Geranium. I'll keep these here, but I want to take some pieces of it. And I basically want to continue that pattern on the other side going this way, because I think that would look really pretty. Now, my septic tank is right there. So it's important to always have access to that. So I could put pots with annuals in there, and that's totally fine. But you'll notice, other than that, I have really jam-packed this bed. And we did it together in a video last year. There's just so many beautiful things in this bed. There were things that bloomed in the springtime, like the leopard's bane, and you can see them tucked in over there. It was so pretty with the yellow flowers that look kind of like daisies. But now there's going to be other things blooming in here. The lupin have just started to go by. They really put on a beautiful show earlier on. I'm going to come in, I'm going to deadhead them. We'll see if they continue to put on a show. If not, that's fine. There are some really pretty iris in here. And also for late summer, early fall interest, we have these plants over here. And those are a very pretty white colored flower. There's another one right over there. And there are also other plants in here that will be blooming. I'll wait until they're blooming and then I'll tell you what they are in future videos. So you'll have to stay tuned. We have some beautiful Coreopsis over here. And I put these in this bed last year. Although there are not a lot of perennials up along the side here, I am enjoying the Coreopsis. I just think it adds such a nice color. When you think about it, you could spend the money on annuals, which, you know, I do like to start annuals from seed. But seeing that I have not gotten my annuals in the ground in this bed yet, I am thoroughly enjoying whatever color is in this bed. Here we are on my front porch. I still have work to do here. I have some pillows to add, and I also want to add more container pots. But you can see at the base of my front porch, there is a very pretty pond. And I made a video recently just showing you some maintenance work I was doing around the pond. I'm very happy with how it's looking. And pretty soon we're going to be adding our window boxes, one here and one there. We're going to pack them with impatiens because it's pretty shady in that corner. We're going to end our tour over there. I'm going to show you what's going on. There's a lot happening. As we head that way, I want to show you right over here, there are 3 small-leafed rhododendrons, and the plan will be to remove those and move those into a different area. I hope to do that this year. We'll have to see. And when we continue this way, I like to call this section here my pansy nursery or holding bed. I've had a lot of luck with my pansies overwintering, and I basically let them go to seed. I drop the seeds here, and I want more pansies every year in this bed so I can just keep taking from them and making container pots and window boxes and whatever, hanging baskets full of pansies in the springtime. And here are a bunch of plants that for the most part, these are plants that I started from seed, with the exception of like this right here. These were just plants that I took cuttings of and just propagated with cuttings. And it looks like a lot, but pretty soon my job as a teacher will be ending and I will have the summer to work on all of these flowers. Final exams are next week, and I will have a lot more time to play in the garden, which means I'll have a lot more time to bring you along with me and show you what I plan on doing with all these flowers. I can't wait. I'm not taking you in close up for everything, but I had to show you the tuberous begonias that we started from seed. And these were seeds that we collected. I'm very excited about how they're looking, as well as these tuberous begonias. I could definitely end this video in another part of my yard where it's super pretty right now. Everything's blooming and looking lush. But I really wanted to end it here because other than my motto being the year of one bed at a time, it's also the good, bad, and the ugly. And I want to embrace the areas that are quote unquote ugly because on one hand, they might be considered ugly, but on another hand, there's so much beauty amongst that. For example, this area here, we could focus on the weeds, but we could also focus on some of the beautiful things behind me. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you have a comment, please leave it down below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.